Welcome to Beacon of Creation, a weekly podcast on game design through the lens of Magic the Gathering. I'm Tim.
And I'm Mono Whiteboarder, also known as Peter.
You know, I've been thinking we could tighten the intro up. Let's try this out. Welcome to the podcast. Every week we talk about magic design. Tim.
Mono Whiteboarder / Peter.
We got half as many words in that intro. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, that's great. We can put a lot more into the podcast now that we've shortened the intro.
Yeah. We have a lot more room for rules text, which we're going to need because we're going to talk all about templating this week. Bloomburrow brought with it the big shift from enters the battlefield to enters. And then I think between Bloomburrow and Dustborn, we're also getting Shivan Dragon gets +1/+1 until end of turn into this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn.
Mm-hmm.
And these are both templating changes that had sort of been theorized about. You know, enters the battlefield's kind of long, and now it's a lot shorter.
I was actually showing some custom cards to a friend of mine, and my friend was like, "Oh, they needed to spell that out." I was like, "Nope, they actually updated the templating, and now it's just enters." So it's a pretty big shift, a striking shift for people who maybe are familiar with Magic the Gathering, but not in the same way.
To kind of prepare for this episode, we had some ideas going in, and then I was just sitting in bed, hitting random on Scryfall, as you do. And I hit a lot of cards that used to say enters the battlefield and now say enters. And it's just a lot cleaner. Like, it's kind of crazy how much nicer a lot of these cards read.
Yeah, I remember when it first happened, I was in the group chat and a lot of friends were like, "Oh no, this is awful. This doesn't make any sense. New players are going to get confused." I was like, no, just give it some time. And now it's like it was always that way. It's second nature.
Yeah. I'm still kind of feeling out the other one, feeling out this card, this creature, this blah, blah, blah. I think if you have to say the full this creature, you haven't really saved a lot of space. Maybe you made it a little clearer.
Where this creature excels at is when you're making all those weird copy scenarios where you're like copying something and it says the name of the creature, but this creature has a different name. Now it's this creature.
Yeah. We were looking at Tender Wild Guide, which is one of the cutest cards in the set, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
But it has this text on it, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. I could see, like, if you have two copies of that because you have the original and you have the adorable little baby, if you say put a +1/+1 counter on Tender Wild Guide, experienced Magic players know that naming the card just means that instance. But I definitely have run into many players over the years that didn't quite know what that meant. If I have two Shivan Dragons and I activate one of their fire breathing abilities, do both of them get pumped? That seems like a fun explosive thing that would be really cool. Oh no, it doesn't work that way. And you just should have known that it didn't work that way. Oh, okay.
Anytime the rules text on a Magic card can make it feel like I'm not rules lawyering somebody when I explain how it works, big bonus for the Magic card itself. So I'm excited for this creature moving forward.
Do you think we could have gotten away with this? Put a +1/+1 counter on this?
I don't like this at the end of a sentence. We need Juliet here to tell us if you can end a sentence with this.
Okay.
But yeah, put a +1/+1 counter on this period does not bring me joy.
Okay. That's a lot of what we're going to be doing this episode because, I mean, it kind of turns out that Magic's templating has been kind of tightened over and over across the years. So a lot of the low-hanging fruit is maybe gone. But we were kind of inspired to do this episode, not just because of Bloomburrow, but because in a recent design challenge, you submitted a card that just kind of accidentally didn't have a bunch of stuff on it that it should have, but you still knew exactly what it was supposed to do. At the top of this card, you said, when this enters, search your library for a basic land card and put it in your hand. And if you didn't think too hard about it, if you weren't in a design challenge, if you weren't, doing some editing, you would know what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple missing pieces here. It should be when this enters, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, then shuffle. Like, there are two clauses missing, but there are maybe not essential ones.
Yeah, and this is so many of my designs, I feel like, end up like this, where I just accidentally cut out the parts of the card that are like mechanically necessary. Like, these are physical actions that you need to do. And I almost arenify the card of we can skip over this. Arena will do all that important stuff. You just need to do the find a basic land card, put that card into your hand.
Yeah.
We could even push it to the most extreme. I think Juliet may have even mentioned this in the podcast, is you could have it be search for a basic land and put it into your hand, because the only place we ever search is the library. If we want to get really crazy, we could say search for basic, because the only type of basic in Magic is a basic land.
Search your library. If we just say search and don't provide a qualifier, we mean from the library. So we could get it down to when this enters, search for a basic land and put it in your hand. When this enters, put a basic land card from your library into your hand.
Ooh.
No search.
No searching. Just just do it. That'd be kind of fun for like an arena setting, because I could see it as arena just decides on a land card that's in your library and puts it in your hand.
Oh, yeah. They already did that a little bit with Seek and alchemy cards, which is like get a random card meeting that condition from your library. Seek a 3-mana value creature. You don't look at your library. You just get that card from your library into your hand in a random one. When this enters, draw the basic land of your choice from your library.
And that has all kinds of rules ramifications, because now you're drawing a card.
Draw effects, yeah.
You know, if you're triggering your opponent's Notion Thief now, I drew my second card this turn.
Yeah, that's true. Teferi really likes it now that it says draw. There are kind of some other things, like you can search other things, like you can search your opponent's library.
Right.
And maybe search is important there because we want to do that. One that I messed with a little while ago is fetch. You know, when this enters, fetch a basic land card. That would imply, you know, you expand the reminder text out for that. Fetch means search your library for a card meeting this condition, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Because, you know, it kind of like enters, you could enter the graveyard, you could enter whatever else, you could enter a hand. But entering the battlefield is by far the most common, and probably searching your own library for a card is probably the most common there, too.
With enters, it always enters the battlefield, but it's put into a graveyard, put into your hand, which in English, those mean basically the same thing, and they're the same action when we're playing the game. But in the finicky rules of Magic, put and enters are more different. Fetch kind of builds on that classic like trump card of Magic players already use this term.
Like mill.
Yeah, mill is the king of that example of, okay, we're finally going to do mill instead of all of that extra language that's associated with it. Oh, another one like that would be like flicker and blink. So instead of exile this card, then return it to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step, you just say flicker. Blink being, you know, return it and then bring it back right away, which is harder for newer players to understand, but the players who have been entrenched in Magic for a long time, I feel like that would be such a natural fit. It's like, good, we get to get rid of so much text.
I don't think I would have remembered off the top of my head that flicker meant bring it back into turn.
Well, that's because you're not a white mage, Tim.
Yeah, I guess like Flicker Wisp or whatever, that's how that works.
The original card Flicker, I think, is also end step.
No, Flicker is right away.
Flicker Wisp is at the next end step.
The card Flicker is instant. It comes back right away.
Oh, so the card Flicker is a blink, is what you're telling me.
Unfortunately.
Wow. Issue.
Even if that did line up, maybe pick one. You could, instead of milling cards, you can exile them from the top of the library. You can, you know, put them on the bottom of the library or whatever. There are other things you can do with cards on the top of your library. But, you know, if you make one of them a lot simpler, maybe you also get to use that effect more. You get to have more fun with it, stuff like that.
If you had to pick one, which one are you picking to abbreviate?
Yeah, I'm kind of tied up on this one. The quick one, where it comes back right away, that is to me the one that's less intuitive to newer players. My opponent's casting it, they're a new player, they're casting murder on my creature. I hit it with Cloud Shift. It comes back right away. it's not usually obvious that now the removal spell doesn't work, that this is a new object or whatever in magic rules or whatever. I think it's the more useful one.
Hmm.
But if we're trying to think like, hey, we're going to use a keyword so that we can get more adoption on something that like is pretty intuitive, is pretty easy to understand otherwise, maybe coming back later is a little bit better. Because, if I cast murder, the thing goes away and comes back a minute and a half later, I understand why the murder didn't work.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah, I'm a little torn up. I want to use a term besides blink and flicker just to create this new keyword action or whatever. Let's say I've got like, I don't know, sparkle. And we're going to say sparkle target creature.
Yep.
And we know that means, or we're going to define that sparkle means exile it, return it immediately. I could also say sparkle target creature until end of turn.
Ooh.
And then it exiles and then it comes back until end of turn. I could say sparkle target creature until the beginning of your next turn. We say the main thing that we're trying to do, exile it temporarily.
Right.
And then afterward, if we don't say a duration, it just is right away. And if we do say a duration, it's some other time.
That's actually some pretty sick text.
Thank you.
I'm just going to imagine it on Flicker Wisp for a second.
Yeah.
Flicker Wisp would become a 1 white white 3/1 with flying. When Flicker Wisp enters the battlefield, sparkle another target permanent until until the beginning of the next end step.
Oh yeah, beginning of the next end step. Yeah, I guess it's not end of turn. Because end of turn is like it just sort of materializes during like cleanup or whatever. And we kind of need it to be while people are still taking actions, I guess.
Yeah. Which maybe is the exact same problem that Wizards ran into. Maybe they've been trying to knock some words off this text for years.
I guess if it's when Flicker Wisp enters exile, or when Flicker Wisp enters sparkle another target permanent until the beginning of the next end step.
Mm-hmm.
Until, we're saying until instead of return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at.
Yeah.
So we are still,
for sure.
The word until is replacing, I don't know, 8 words or whatever there. So we're maybe getting somewhere. What if we got to sparkle things all the time? I feel like we're going to expand the target audience if White Ski Mechanic is called Sparkle.
Is Sparkle. This is kind of connected. So one of the things that you also have to do, and that Sparkle kind of cleans up for a lot of these, is refer to the owner. Because Cloud Shift doesn't refer to the owner. You can Cloud Shift a creature you steal, and that creature's yours now. You control that creature until the game's over.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
But with other things, like let's say, and this is a common mistake I make all the time too.
Yeah.
You create an unsummon, 1 blue, return a creature to its owner's hand. What if we just take off the owners? Return a creature to hand. Because, like, obviously it can't go to my hand, if I don't own the card. Yeah. It wouldn't make sense to go back to my hand because, or even like put it on top of its owner's library. It doesn't make sense to put it on top of my opponent's library.
Yeah. The sleeve's a different color.
Yeah.
To hand. That does have some of the same shock as enters.
Right.
Return target creature to hand.
Put target creature on top of library. How do you feel about that one?
On top of the library?
Yeah,
I guess return target. I guess that's the thing that's a little tricky about this is that I want a the in there. But if we put a the in there, we've already used up half of our savings.
Where enters, I feel like it makes logical sense for a new player. They're going to see when this enters and think like enters the game, enters the battlefield. That's where the game's happening. They're not going to try and apply that to enters the library, enters the graveyard. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But if a new player sees return to hand, are they going to try and return it to their own hand, even if they don't own the card?
I think that's kind of a blanket thing that's pretty consistent and easy to explain, where you just never have someone else's cards in your hand or library or graveyard. Because we already have to say, Like if I control your creature and then the creature dies, we already know we already have to explain that goes back to its owner's graveyard.
Yep. That's right. In no situation in Magic is a card being put into a zone that doesn't belong to its owners except the battlefield. The battlefield's the only unique situation. I never have my opponent's card in my graveyard, or my opponent's card in my library, or my opponent's card in my command zone. Now, is there some benefit to removing owner from the card because owner feels very like metagamey in a way? Like owner is a very gamified term, you know. If you never saw owner on another Magic card, would you feel sad?
I was curious. I wonder what they say for owner in the Japanese versions of the cards. It's just phonetic. Ona.
Oh. Wait. Does Japanese not have the word owner?
Of course they do, but for some reason they are using like I guess what I was trying to learn and was confirmed when I looked at this is that Ona is like owner in Magic is treated as a game concept. It's not meant to be the general concept of ownership.
Right.
It's if I'm borrowing my friend's deck, I don't, bounce a creature to someone's hand, across the room.
Right. Which would be funny. Good uncard design.
It's sometimes, I don't know. This is I guess kind of a tangent, but it's sort of my way of checking like, is this fully a game concept or are we trying to use the language? And I think, creature is the same thing. Kuricha. Like we're not trying to describe its like weirdness as like a little goblin. We're saying this is like just a magic concept, a creature. Anyhow, maybe by putting it on more common cards than when owner shows up on rare cards, it like makes more sense. But we can trim down. We can get unsummoned down to at least return target creature to the hand. And if we want to return target creature to hand.
I do like return target creature to hand. I think you have to have the library, though, and I don't know why I feel that way.
It's a great question. Yeah. What's next?
What sounds good? Can you think of a good transition?
One of the things that what we even already ran into in this episode is like Flicker Wisp, flickers it until the beginning of the next end step. And you also have the concept of end of turn. That end step and end of turn are not the same thing in Magic, and the difference is like kind of important. Is something that I was thinking of maybe trying to tackle. What I would do is end step is still that step where people can still do stuff. It's like a time on my opponent's end step, I'm going to draw 2 cards or whatever. But things that last until the end of turn, we're going to use a different phrase than end of turn.
Ooh.
Something like giant growth.
Yep.
Instead of saying target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn, we're going to say target creature gets +3/+3 temporarily.
And this kind of goes hand in hand with the arena concept of perpetually. Target creature gets +3/+3 perpetually.
Yeah, perpetually gains.
Now we can
flying.
transition that to we can transition that to temporarily, and temporarily works really well on paper because we don't have anything to remember. All we have to remember is that we're getting rid of this at the end of the turn.
Yeah. If there's no qualifier, it's just normal permanent. Like as long as that object continues to be that game object. If it's temporarily, then we know that lasts until end of turn. And if it's perpetually, that persists even, traveling through different zones. All right.
I like the idea of taking end of turn, removing that completely, and saying something shorter. I don't know why temporarily doesn't like ring for me.
It's a little longer word.
Here's my suggestion for a replacement.
Yeah.
Target creature gets +3/+3 for now.
We should at least errata all Nicol Bolas cards to say that. Very nice.
It works really well on the black cards too. Target creature gets -2/-2 for now.
Target creature can't attack for now.
For now. Oh, that's really good. Yeah. The more we say it, the more I like it. which is kind of interesting. I feel like that applies to every template change. Is like
Yeah.
there's a threshold of cards where once I read it on like the fourth or fifth card, I'm already converted. Like, yeah,
Oh,
I'm into
okay.
this now.
Very nice.
Yeah. What do you think about once a turn? Kind of in the same vein. It's just like a clunky line of text, but it's a line of text we're using more and more.
Yeah, and it's something that like is loaded at the end, which is something that like a lot of people have expressed. When we started using it, it was sort of in the groany sort of way of like, I was excited about this card until I got to the last sentence, like in kind of like a sarcastic way, but also just in like a comprehension way when I'm trying to understand what's going on. Sometimes like I'm reading a card and, oh, okay, the point of this card is not to engine up. The point of this card is to give you like a little trickle of stuff.
Yeah. And so like an example of a card that does this is those cards that say this ability triggers only once each turn.
Mm-hmm.
If you did this ability triggers once, that's actually a real thing that happened on a card in Bloomburrow. So that doesn't
like
work.
The thought chucker or whatever. Yeah.
I actually made the mistake when I was playing that card of you get threshold and you can
you just
activate
start slamming the button.
And I was like, wait, why is my card not working?
Rip.
And then I had to reread it.
Because I think one of the things that's awkward about it, I'm reading some cards here, and I just want to read one or two just to get the feel here. I'm looking at just the first one alphabetically that came up out of 260 on Scryfall. Academy Wall, which besides being a defender, says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. I think one of the things that's kind of awkward about it, besides the sort of like, oh, it's not an engine, that's kind of sad. I kind of wanted to loot multiple times, like the disappointment of reading that. It's also not whenever. Like,
oh yeah.
we shouldn't be saying whenever and not mean whenever.
Hold on, I'm just bringing up the card so that I have it for reference.
Yeah. You should know this one from Design League.
From Design League, yeah. The reason I don't know this one from Design League is because it was right out. I did not even consider building around this card. If you do discard, God, if you do, it's just, I hate that line of text.
Maybe we could tackle that one a little bit later too.
Yeah. I use if you do a lot, like as a nesting condition.
Yeah. How does it feel if we say once a turn when you cast?
I was literally about to say that, yeah. Because I think you're right. Front loading it suddenly makes you, okay, I know the context of this ability right away.
Once a turn when you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may draw a card. It's like 25% shorter to write it that way. Once a turn when you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. That's like a good 25% shorter than whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. This ability triggers only once each turn.
Yeah, you're shortening whenever to win, which is useful. And then this ability triggers only is getting cut out completely.
Yeah.
Each is getting changed to A. It's substantially tighter, even though it's still like wordy.
Yeah.
The words you're choosing to use are condensed.
One of the things I was thinking about is like, how much extra front load does this do before you get to the part that matters? What do I get? I get to loot, right? Like that's the thing that I want to know the most. Like a battalion trigger or something like that. I feel like battalions sometimes like, you're like, where's the part where it actually describes the text that matters?
No, here's just this really hard condition to meet. Cool.
Yeah, or landfall or whatever. Like, especially the longer those like ability word clauses get, the more annoying they are. But one of the things writing this out is that I'm only like, between the whenever version and the once a turn version, I've only added about like 6 characters to the front load, which feels like a decent price to pay to get like 20 characters back on the end.
I think your comment about ability words is relevant here too, because one of the nice things about landfall is that I see the italicized text landfall and I'm like, okay, I can skip the first sentence. The first sentence does not matter to me. I know what landfall means. And then I look at what the ability does. And so I get to the ability a lot quicker because there's just one quick blurb. So like maybe if once a turn was just italicized, oh, now I know I can skip that and just go to when I cast an instant or sorcery. Okay, that's what I want to do, and I get to draw a card.
Italicized. Yeah.
The more words we teach people, you can skip these once you get to a certain point in your Magic career, the
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Yeah.
add
Yeah.
in. They're gonna come up with a symbol.
When we were talking about Academy Wall, one of the things that kind of jumped out while we were reading it is something that's in the middle of that card where you say, like, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. And that if you do actually shows up on it looks like 1,000 Magic cards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like, it feels like there's opportunity there.
It's another one of these, and it's like a common theme we're seeing with a lot of these. It's just like once you've played enough Magic, there are these like clauses that are formatting rules clauses, but like I already know that I don't get to do this unless I already did the thing.
Hmm.
You know, I don't have to discard a card unless I drew a card.
Yeah.
May already has this kind of condition of like, you may do this, you may opt into this ability, but you don't have
Yeah.
to.
And I already know that if I don't do this thing, I don't get to continue reading the card.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe a slightly shorter one is like an attack trigger, like Arrogant Poet. This is a Strixhaven card. Whenever Arrogant Poet attacks, you may pay 2 life. If you do, it gains flying until end of turn. I already know that, like, if I don't pay, I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing that we're kind of chafing on. I guess there is something kind of nice about it splitting into 2 sentences. One thing I was thinking is if the card read this way, whenever Arrogant Poet attacks, you may pay 2 life to give Arrogant Poet flying until end of turn.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't actually made it that any shorter though, because I kind of have to like restate that Arrogant Poet is the thing gaining flying. That if you do, it gains flying. That's like somehow that sentence reset allows you to, you don't have to restate the card name. I don't know. I thought I had an improvement, but now I'm less convinced. I know how to make it better.
What about, could we shuffle around the order of the operations? Whenever Arrogant Poet attacks, it gains flying if you pay 2 life. No, but then that's not a may ability. You may have it gain flying if you pay 2 life.
Yeah, now we're back in the haven't saved any space zone, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good place to think through.
We've deleted if you do, which for some reason I just hate that phrase viscerally.
On this poet, it's actually not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not feeling too bad about it, but it's usually in like the Academy Wall situation when it's like, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may blah, 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 blah. If you do, blah, 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 blah. Instead of trying to solve it for all cards, you could just try to tackle the problem a different way. Like one of the things that I was sort of thinking was in the zone of sort of like how costs are written in general in Magic, where like, this Arrogant Poet, I could say, pay 2 life. If Arrogant Poet is attacking, it gains flying until end of turn. But that is a little funny because I can just free activate if I have an incentive to lose a bunch of life.
Right.
So you need something. What I'm trying to think through is to stop that thing where I can, if I want to, I could just pay 2 life 8 times and go down to 4 life if I want to.
You're almost trying to condense a triggered ability in the same way we condense activated abilities without turning it into an activated ability by accident.
Yeah. Like a lot of these we're talking about revising all the existing rules, but maybe I'm also just thinking through like a way you could not necessarily mess with existing cards, turn existing triggers into activated abilities, but just say like, hey, we're going to do more activated abilities instead of triggers.
Mm-hmm. You may pay 2 life to gain flying or something.
Yeah, we're kind of talking about part of a cost that is not necessarily like a resource that you're paying, but like a restriction that you have to meet.
Exactly.
We have kind of a version of this like requirement or something that we want to say, like a thing that a cost you're allowed to pay as part of a trigger even hitting the stack, and that's Exert. One of the famous Exert cards is On-Crop Crasher, which is a Minotaur. It has haste, is 3/2. It's like a good aggressive card. And the wording on Exert is, you may exert On-Crop Crasher as it attacks. When you do, target creature can't block this turn. One of the things you can kind of say here, like for our a poet earlier, you could say, you may pay 2 life as arrogant poet attacks. When you do, target creature can't block this turn. Does that feel any better?
It's funny because it's the same thing.
It is kind of the same thing, which is kind of a funny concept. Like, we haven't necessarily finished solved the like if you do thing that we both kind of dislike.
But for some reason, I like it more. Like, this is the weird part of the card. And I'm trying to figure out maybe if there's a reason that the when you do feels better than the if you do. Is it just like active versus passive voice or something?
We're used to the cost being kind of on the left or at the beginning of what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're saying you may pay 2 life as arrogant poet attacks, that's sort of kind of the same function as like 2 tap, sacrifice a land, draw a card.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here are the things that I'm going to have to do. And if I do that, I can actually get a thing.
Here's something unintentional that we'd be doing, and I'm curious if you think it's a problem. The reason On-Crop Crasher is phrased like this is because exerting itself is not a trigger. When you exert, I think it would be technically like a special action.
Yeah.
Arrogant Poet is a trigger. If you were on Arena, a little thing would pop up of Arrogant Poet. Do you want to pay 2 life? If that triggers on the stack, like whether this thing has flying or doesn't have flying, I, as the defending player, am probably going to react the same way. Oh, if they pay 2 life, I'll use a removal spell. If they don't pay 2 life, I'll block it with my 0/4 wall. So in that case, the trigger here is kind of superfluous because like very few people are going to respond to the trigger, I think. They're going to wait for you to pay your 2 life and see what happens.
Yeah.
Maybe there's like a corner case, you're playing a bat that cares about losing life.
Yeah, maybe the trigger version is a little cleaner in some cases, because I am thinking a little bit about the arena case with Exert. Exert or Enlist, I guess, is the other example that's kind of similar. Where when you're doing that, it's declare attackers, and you're kind of looking at your creatures you're deciding what to attack with. When you click on your Exert creature to potentially attack, it has to like pop up a thing like right next to that creature in the UI. Attack normally, attack with Exert. Which is like a really special case. It's not a UI that exists for many other things in the game. Maybe by letting it be a trigger, the like if you do kind of stuff, the arrogant poet style, like maybe that's just like more common. Like if you play Arena for more than 10 minutes, you're going to have a lot of those trigger pop-ups. And it's just a common thing that you know how to do, you know how to answer yes or no. And that UI is a little more standardized.
Yeah, this templating stuff goes deep. We're all the way on the like user interface side of like, man, if we change this template, and like this is probably stuff that like you really do have to think about. If you're a Wizards employee, they're probably on that. Kind of another thing that would have like big ramifications is something like Heirloom Blade's ability. Heirloom Blade is this equipment, you attach it to a creature. Whenever equipped creature dies, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card that shares a creature type with it. Is there a way we could like truncate that kind of tunneling through your deck, the digging through your deck?
Like Discover is another example of that kind of thing. Like Discover on Atali's Flavor. Let me just find a creature that's the easiest. We're talking all about Enters today. And Enters game. I'm cooking today.
I hate that I found that so funny.
Like a Discover example is when Geological Appraiser enters, if you cast it, discover 3, and then the reminder text is kind of chunky. Exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less. Cast it without paying its mana cost or put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. We've started to see this more with like land cards, where land cards will say like a kind of a classic one might be Satyr Wayfinder. When this enters, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. Sometimes you exile those cards. They're black cards that are like, or red cards that are like exile cards until you hit a condition. In Bloomburrow, we sort of have this clifftop lookout. When clifftop lookout enters, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. Put that card, blah, 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 onto the battlefield, something, something.
It's almost like two things to shorten. Can we shorten reveal cards from the top of your library until?
Yeah.
And then can we also shorten put the rest in a location in an order?
And kind of like the mill version, like there are lots of kinds of mill that like mill until you hit a land. Like that mill doesn't work that way. You have to actually write it out. Target player puts cards from the top of their library until they put a land card this way, blah, 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 blah. You have to do the long version there.
Mm-hmm.
But for most cases, you can use mill. Same thing here. Is there something for most cases we can use a keyword action of some kind?
Yeah. So first off, I think putting them on the bottom of the library or determining the location where they go is probably the easiest one to try and tackle. And I think if we're doing that, the one that's most commonly used, because it's the safer one, is put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
Hmm.
And then you could probably find a word that does that. Tuck the rest. Hide the rest. Hide doesn't work because of hideaway. Bin the rest. Some sort of catchy, snappy one-word phrase.
Read that out to me. Give me clifftop lookout, but with.
All right. So imagine clifftop lookout saying, "Put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and bin the rest." And then you could have parentheses. Put those cards on the bottom of your library in a random order until people are comfortable with it, and then soon you just have cards that say bin the rest, tuck the rest.
So we're saving and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order and tuck the rest. Actually, we do actually save a little bit. And like we talked about before, you can't ever like tuck cards from someone else's, in someone else's possession somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do get a decent chunk back off of that. Huh.
I think this might be like our most this is actually feasible, right? Like you could do this. But it would mean for whatever set you introduce it in, you actually are adding words, because in the reminder text, you'd have to still have put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
Yeah, I think that's showing us that there is actually a decent amount of text at the end of these effects in addition to the beginning. I was originally kind of looking at the beginning part, the like tunnel, like, hey, look until you find this thing. That's the thing I thought was going to be the most savings. But I think you're already saving a lot just with that stuff on the end.
How does seek work specifically on Arena? What do we do when we seek? Obviously, the game does it for us, but
I think it takes a random card from your library. It's not dependent on the order of the library.
Okay.
Because you're thinking like seek.
Yeah.
If you want to black border seek.
Yeah. Which if you were to black border seek, it would be how we're describing it. Random from the top. So technically there's some manipulation that can go on, but it's limited. The fact that we have the keyword seek makes me believe that you could have a keyword similar functionality, but something we can do in paper.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting that they chose to make seek work that way. Like I'm looking at Bounty of the Deep, which is just a random alchemy card. If you have no land cards in your hand, seek a land card and a non-land card. Otherwise, seek 2 non-land cards. And then it has to seek a card, put 1 at random from your library into your hand. And I have seen clarified a couple times that seek does not care about the order in the library. So yeah, it doesn't, if the land card is the very top one, that's not guaranteed to be grabbed. It could grab any land card.
My thought being, what if Clifftop Lookout said something like, when Clifftop Lookout enters, find a land card?
Yeah.
To find a land card, we spell out exactly what the text is. Once again, you're adding text in the short term to hopefully remove a bunch of text in the long term.
What we're sort of doing there is where instead of discover, which is discover a certain mana value, and like, hey, go cast something of that mana value. instead of casting a thing of a certain mana value, we're trying to put into hand a thing with a certain quality.
Yeah.
Do we think putting it in hand is like 40% of the cases, 50%? Because there is like look for things off the top and put like a dinosaur into play or whatever.
Yeah,
Like
but
put
I
it
think
directly on the battlefield.
generally commons, uncommons are putting it to hand.
Well, I mean, Clifftop Lookout puts it on the battlefield.
Oh, that's true. Right. Because lands are going to go on the battlefield for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that happens is a lot of these cards that do something similar
Yeah.
specify how many you're supposed to look at. They don't reveal off the top. They say, look
Yeah.
at the top 3, look at the top 4, look at the top
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
Which then, if you're doing that, you're going to miss a chunk of cards.
Yeah, I think that's why you have the like Clifftop Lookout version of just like go until you find a random one. Because like Seder Wayfinder is something that looks at the top 4, grab a land or whatever. Well, I guess if one's a mountain and one's a forest, I have some choice, but I often just have to take whatever I see.
Mm-hmm.
And so the kind of tunnel version, the Clifftop Lookout version, that's close enough and with no fail rate.
Yeah, the no fail rate is really nice on it.
When we first started reading it, I was a little skeptical that we could save enough space, but realizing that defining the bottom part, the like what you do with the rest of the cards, like having that be part of the definition of some mechanic really shows that you could get something nice and tight with this.
Yeah.
Kind of in the vein of Discover.
Yeah. It's funny how I think a lot of the cost savings in language is trying to shorten the physical mechanics of how you, the person, interacts with the cards that you are playing.
Search your library, reveal the card, then shuffle your library. Yeah, physical actions. Yeah.
It's a funny consequence of a non-digital paper game.
Yeah.
Because if this was digital, the machine can just do it very quickly. No questions asked.
One thing we've seen recently is the finality counter that we're putting on creatures. Like, hey, you can bring a creature back from the graveyard, but it has a finality counter, meaning that if it dies, it gets exiled. So you can't bring back the same thing multiple times. We've started to see like different versions of like giving a card flashback, like Snapcaster style. When Snapcaster enters, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. That's a fun piece of text, and that it exiles is like a really desirable part of flashback.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's some way that we can like get in there, like what it means to give something flashback and like is there a standard cost that we can give it? Is there something like, so we don't have to keep saying like it's equal to its mana cost or whatever.
So obviously when you give something flashback, if you just give it flashback, like flashback is an alternate cost to casting a spell that you can only do from a certain location. So if we just give a card flashback from a rule standpoint, that means nothing. You have to tell the player how they can cast the spell. Can we tell them how to cast the spell without being so obtuse about it?
Maybe we say if the flashback cost is not defined by the effect, it's just the mana cost of the card.
Mm-hmm.
Snapcaster would just lose its last sentence. The Snapcaster Mage enters, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. Done. Instead of saying the flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. But that's probably only if you want to do this pretty often.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that you're necessarily granting flashback quite that often enough.
What if, when Snapcaster enters the battlefield, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback equal to its mana cost until end of turn? So you don't have like this redo sentence of like the flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. You just say gains flashback equal to its mana cost.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Is there some way that we can like tackle or bundle in when we're talking about like the equivalent of a finality counter?
What if you did the Torrential Gear Hulk is like 4 blue enters the battlefield and you get to cast something for free?
Yeah.
What if when you cast the spell for free, you cast it with finality?
Oh,
Cast a spell without paying its mana cost with finality. Kind of a cool line of text.
You may final cast.
Final
Target instant or
cast.
sorcery card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost.
I don't hate it. I honestly do not hate it.
Final cast.
Final cast.
I don't know. It seems very anime to me. I don't know why. Torrential Gear Hulk. What a card.
Could you say a spell cast this way is exiled? No, because I think that would mean that the spell just like never resolves.
It is kind of interesting, just templating wise. I never really thought about how it says you may cast target instant card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. So, like it actually differentiates there that we're talking about a card is the thing that you're allowed to start doing something with, but only when it becomes a spell does it then gain the property of exiling afterward. I guess you'd probably never in your life play Torrential Gear Hulk, target it instant, then play another spell that returns that instant to your hand. That would just not happen.
I love that. Man, now I really want to I want to find the reason to do that.
Something gains unearth, but I don't need the unearth because I'm going to cast Raise Dead. I don't know. There's flashback on a couple cards in Bloomburrow. There's like a discard spell and I think another one, like an otter spell.
Oh yeah, the otter ball guys.
So it feels like we're going to get like, hey, if you're an uncommon in a modern Magic set, you're allowed to just have flashback.
Yeah, flashback became deciduous, so it can technically be used in any set.
One of the defining traits of flashback, I guess you'd say, is that flashback costs are usually different from the mana cost of the spell.
Mm-hmm.
I would guess that it's 80% plus of flashback cards have costs different from their mana costs. So my earlier idea maybe is kind of ill-advised, where I was thinking like, if you don't say the flashback cost, it just means the same as this mana cost. That kind of actually doesn't jive with how flashback appears on cards.
Yeah, people definitely feel like they want to get a reduced rate. Well, I guess even increased rate. Yeah, it's just different.
It's just different. Yeah,
Sometimes
it's more, sometimes it's less. It's like a lot more on the Bloomburrow cards to flashback than the cast initially.
The exception is Beast Attack. 2 green flashback, 2 green mana cost, create a 4/4 green beast. They figured out the rate on that.
I don't know if I've ever cast Beast Attack in my life.
You've never played a Wart the Raid Mother Commander deck then.
I think my only chance would have been it looks like it was in the Garrick versus Liliana dual deck. I think there's a chance that I played that deck enough that that I just had the opportunity to cast that spell.
Yeah, I love the dual decks.
Yeah, I feel kind of medium at him. I think this is totally unrelated to the episode, but I'm kind of cooling on ways to play Magic where you aren't part of the process of sculpting the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Like a dual deck. I was thinking about this the other day with battle boxes, which is like you have a shared library and you often have like a separate land library and some other mechanics. I'm sort of cooling on that. It's not magic-y enough for me personally.
Mm-hmm. There's something about the construction that's very important to your relationship with Magic.
I was even thinking, it was a whole tangent, I guess, but I'm never going to do an episode about this probably. So here's the chance to get this thought out. I play a lot, I would say, Jump In, which is the arena version of Jumpstart.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's kind of nice about Jump In that isn't usually what you do with Jumpstart is in Jump In, you get like a choice of 3 packs. And then after you pick that, you get a choice of 3 packs. Like even that amount of agency over what I'm doing feels important to me personally. Like if I'm just given 2 packs and I just combine them blind, I don't know. I feel like I've been robbed somehow.
Yeah, maybe it's the idea of I made my own grave. I chose 2 packs that didn't make sense together.
Yeah. my first pack is like cool and hard to synergize with, and then I saw a high power second pack, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to opt out of synergy. My two halves are not going to work together, and I decided to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Kind of unrelated to templating, but the thoughts were out there, I guess.
Good tangent.
That's probably it for our templating thoughts. I think there's like infinite room for this, and I have many times seen renders of like people like, I think bolding and italicing things for battalion is like a common thing that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
We were even thinking about like, are there symbols you could use? Symbols are maybe like the highest form of, canonization as a magic concept. Like if you're going to put a symbol for sorcery speed, a symbol for once a turn, those things are going to say like, this is as important as we can get in terms of defining how magic works. If you've got those kinds of ideas, so I'm definitely interested in it. Color washing, that's another common one. I'd love to see that in the latest episode channel or anywhere else. If you've seen articles or whatever, would love to see those. What was your favorite of our changes here? What do you think has got the most legs?
Oh, shoot, I got to remember. I feel like there was one I blatantly said was my favorite. I think it actually has something. Was it Clifftop Lookout? I think it might have been Clifftop Lookout. I think that makes the most sense. I think having a go-to phrase, at least for what to do with the cards when you're done with them, probably has the most legs to stand on.
Yeah.
I also have to shout out for now or temporarily for now. I still really like that.
As we talked it out, the for now one was just somehow I don't know why it's ominous, but it's just so ominous that it feels a little silly. But I think either with his for now or temporarily, there's not just a try to save words component to it. There's like a differentiate two things that are fuzzy component to it. Let's differentiate beginning of the end step from end of turn and make sure people know those are two different things. Kind of like generic mana and like colorless mana.
Yeah.
Couple of our usual reminders. Design League is finishing up. By the time this is up, we'll have the winners for the top 4, and we'll probably know the challenge for the finals of Design League, which is going to be very exciting. So pay attention to all that kind of stuff. Once we get to like a lot of cards, you're really starting to see what that designer wants to do. Like we're just coming off of a challenge where you had to design 8 cards based on like a Morrow style teaser. So you're really seeing someone's vision for like a chunk of a set. And I'm sure the final's going to be even bigger. I don't know. It's a good way to get to know some people that, maybe you only know just, the occasional card they see on Discord. People have been doing their like work in progress threads as well. So those are fun to read through. But the other thing that you can definitely participate in is our monthly design challenge. Our one for August is 8 legs a week, which is to design a card that makes an 8/8 octopus creature token. We saw a couple of these in Bloomburrow Commander and stuff.
Our first bonus point is, I want to hold your hand. Use the word hand on the card. In the rules text, you can reference hand size, where a card goes to your hand, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna have to sing this one. I don't know the melody to this one.
An octopus's garden in the sea.
The card can potentially make more than one of these tokens.
Yeah.
Friendly reminder that cephalids are now octopi.
Yeah. We've had some questions on that, like, can make more than one of the token. If you just make a sorcery that makes it 8/8 and then snapcaster it, that card did not cast itself a second time. That was someone else making that extra token. I mean, we still always want to see your cards, so don't let that hold you back. But yeah. If you're looking for the actual bonus point, the card itself has to maybe bring away to get that extra token.
Or maybe you want to ignore the bonus points totally, go for 0 bonus points. Hey,
that's the M-dub difference.
Yeah. If you really want your card to stand out, I think it's harder to not do the bonus points, honestly.
Because they're so natural.
Yeah. You just so easily want to go into the rhythm of making those bonuses.
I guess if you're going to get around to making 1 octopus creature token, you may as well make more. That'll be due August 30th. And then we always talk about them on the pod. So if you just started listening, you want to get your take a shot at seeing what we'll say about your card. We're going to read all the cards, and we'd love to see yours. That's about it for the content for the podcast for the week. Hop on the Discord. That's where all the juice is. While I got you here, I think you were thinking about, you want to talk a little bit about some Bloomburrow. What were you thinking about?
Yeah. I have drafted probably more of this set than I have any set for a little bit.
Okay.
I've been really into Bloomburrow, and I know you're always drafting, Tim. You're a draft fanatic, so I just figured we could get a little chit chat, share some strategies, some tips that we found. I don't know if you're in the don't draft blue at any cost camp that I'm in. I don't touch blue cards anymore.
Yeah, that's kind of where I've been, or at least my very first draft, I had Rail Zarek, and it actually went great. But
oh, nice. I think I was there when you ulted Rail in one of your games.
And and got to the bottom of my library as well. I've played against some blue decks, and like whenever you see that that 1/1 unblockable that can loot or maybe draw cards, I'm always tempted to get into blue. Or when I see the second one, I'm like, oh, someone's getting hooked up. And the third one, oh no. I think the thing people have kind of figured out for blue is that the common rats are bad. And that sort of makes it hard for you to like get started with a deck. The sort of emerging lesson from play boosters, I guess, that we're sort of picking up is that they're aiming for like this pretty high floor on all the commons. And maybe even a low ceiling, like a really tight power band, so that all of them are basically like pretty playable, and all of them will make sure that you have enough cards for your deck. But design-wise, they haven't actually hit that for every color every time. And when you're missing like the 2 blue rats are bad, well, now this whole deck is going to be hard to assemble.
I wonder if that higher floor, lower ceiling has contributed to the fact of like, I'll find a card that, maybe I think black is open, or I think red is open, or I have a good black bomb and I'm getting nice black commons.
Yeah.
I'll find like deep into pack 1, I haven't picked up a second color. I'm just comfortably in one color.
Oh, heaven.
And sometimes I'll grab like a hybrid card, but I'm still like, I could build a mono black deck at this point.
Yeah.
And I'll really wait to choose my second color until I'm really confident of like, this is a reason to be red. This is a reason to be green. I don't know if you found that with this set or if you found that with play boosters in general.
That you find it easier to stay open pack 1?
Yeah. Just stay one color for as much of pack 1 as possible.
I have not been able to do that. It might be a good thing to do. I guess the other takeaway that I've had so far with Bloomburrow, because we just did the signpost episode on it, where ahead of time, before playing the set, we kind of looked at the archetypes and tried to figure out like, how fun are they? How cool are they? That kind of stuff. We kind of went into that thinking, hey, these themes are like really corset-y, really bland. And after playing this set, I feel like this is the opposite of corset. All these cards are meant for like 1 or 2 decks.
Yeah.
The cards are not generic. You're not just putting like the 8 best blue cards and the 8 best black commons in your that you can manage to draft all in your deck. You have to find cards that fit with your overall deck theme.
I was literally saying earlier today, I feel like this is the first draft set that I've played that scratches the constructed itch that I get of like, ooh, I want to build a specific deck using this card. Yeah. I feel like every draft I've had a card of like, ooh, okay, I'm going to really build around this. I'm going to really think about this.
Because like the cards end up being kind of archetypey, the commons and the uncommon, I guess less so the uncommons, but a lot of the commons, they go in like 1 to 2 decks. One of the kind of side effects of that is like when it comes together, your deck has like a really powerful identity. And when it doesn't come together, your deck is just absolutely miserable to play. Like I've had situations, I've got a pretty decent color and then I have a second color and then, a third color comes along. So I start taking those cards. But then my second color starts coming along a little bit more and I'm flapping a little bit. And then at the end, I'm like, I feel like I have 23 cards that I would say are good cards, but they just don't go that well together. That to me is the opposite of the core set effect. The core set effect is like, I'm just going to find good cards, whatever the best cards I find. The commons are like really separated in their power level. And it's more about like just knowing what's good or picking up the things that are coming late.
If this little convo hasn't been an endorsement for you to go out and get a Bloomburrow draft in, I don't know what else is. This set has been a lot of fun to draft.
some of the archetypes have been a little more fun, or the cards like it feels better than I expected it to. Like I
Mhm.
think Expend is maybe the best big example of that for me. Conceptually, I think of Expend being like about as boring as a mechanic has ever been. And it's like the mechanic of the raccoons, so having a mechanic be boring for a whole faction seems like it's a problem. But because Expend and raccoons themselves are about size, and Expend usually gives you a little bit more size, it ends up being a little more fun than I expected, where the
Mhm.
turns where I can pump it, now's the time to attack. The turns that I can't pump it, now I have to like, kind of sit and wait. And it has kind of like an ebb and flow that can be pretty fun.
There's like 3 turns in the middle of the game, maybe like turn 5, 6, and 7,
Yeah.
where Expend is like fun and interesting.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'm in top deck mode, and just every time I top deck a land, I feel worse and worse. Or I top deck it, and like now I top deck 2 drops, and I feel terrible about it. Where it's like
Yeah.
normally it'd be like, at least I got not a land.
Expend has been fun to play against in that way. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people have been playing a lot of the like green white rabbit deck and the green black squirrel deck. The rabbit deck can sometimes be very explosive, but it's also pretty good at pretty long games because, it can usually take advantage of a humongous board. And the squirrel deck, like if it doesn't die early, it's going to take over.
Yeah.
Playing squirrels against raccoons is kind of a fun matchup because it's like I'm going to be not in a lot of danger for the first turn or two. Then I'm suddenly going to be in a ton of danger. And then if I could just get past that, then my opponent's going to run out of juice.
Mhm. I really enjoyed. I got to play the squirrel deck today. Really enjoyed the squirrel deck, but I don't think any deck has topped my 7 agate blade assassin deck that I got to play with.
The 1/3 lizard, when it attacks, you drain one from your opponent.
Yeah. I think that's my favorite part of limited is that like you can live the dream and draft more than
Yeah.
4 copies of a card.
Yeah.
So when I start seeing a card come around late, it doesn't matter how bad it is. I got to take every copy of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Play boosters sort of math wise mean that like any given common isn't that much more common than previously. There are fewer commons, so it seems like there should be more of each.
Hmm.
It should be easier to get 5 of a thing, but there just are fewer commons per pack. I have wanted the cube or the set where there are fewer commons, but there are also just as many in the packs.
Yeah.
So like it's more likely that you're getting 2 or 3 or 4 of a card. That's something that I really enjoy and is really cool. When I saw that deck, that's the kind of thing I see a lot of potential in that. Doesn't
Hmm.
even have to be like a collect 'em all. This creature gets +1/+1 for each other 7 dwarves you control. It doesn't have to be that linear. It can just be I have a bunch of cards with the same strategy. I have 20 of the same creature with banding, old school style.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just interesting to see multiples of a card and just know like I'm a little
Yeah.
bit more likely to get that card. Today
Yeah.
in my squirrel deck I had like 2 of that 2/1 changeling that comes down on turn 2,
Oh, okay, yeah.
which was relevant because it was a squirrel for my squirrel deck, and it helped me with a little bit with color fixing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just nice to have to know that like, oh, I could see this slightly more often.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like there's a lot of potential with that. I think maybe it's if you're doing the 20, 30, 40, 50 drafts of a format, seeing the same commons too many times might be a little tedious. If I'm creating my own environment, I'm not quite as worried about that.
Mhm.
Even like the cubes that I've played the most that I've made, that's probably like 20 plays. I've probably played the Innistrad cube like 20 times and with different people every time. And there's also, version changes. So repetitiveness is not quite as much a problem there.
Yeah.
Whereas like I'm doing it. I've got the deck where I have 5 of the same card. That always feels good.
Yeah. We'll see how the streamers do late into Play Booster if they're still interested, if they're still keeping
Yeah.
people excited and engaged.
Play boosters may have accidentally like blown up sealed, and we're still kind of feeling that information kind of sift through and understanding why. You have 1 fewer card per pack. You're less
Yeah.
likely. There's fewer playable colors per sealed pool. You have the bomb swings that like OTJ had a lot of, where you might have 11 rares in a pack pretty feasibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I did lose to Bird Deck, which I
Ooh.
didn't. I've only ever seen once in my life, and it annihilated me. Maybe that's when you're supposed to do it. That 4-mana 3/3 flyer. When we were talking about it, I was a little like, man, I think these cards are kind of bad now. Like a 4-mana 3/3 flyer that used to be like a good flyer 10
Mhm.
years ago. I guess that's the common thing now with play boosters. If your common is bad for your strategy, you're out of luck. You're bringing down the whole strategy.
Yeah.
But if you get the rare bird, you're all set. Castrol or whatever, that thing's an absolute monster.
I got to play that at pre-release. Felt really good. Yep, felt really good. I didn't even have that many birds, but
I've seen it go by a couple times. I haven't been tempted. Once I know the format a little bit better and I know I can get away with, I might get some blue-white in, but for now I just need to win. I have to try to win.
I'm excited. I don't know if you remember Battle for Zendikar and how really late into that draft format, like early on, black-green was undraftable, and it became so undraftable that actually it became one person could draft an amazing black-green deck at most pods because they got all the black-green cards.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if that's where this set ends up with blue, specifically like the blue-red deck. I still think the cards are generally like too weak and clunky, but maybe there's enough for one drafter to draft the perfect deck.
It's something that we're seeing now with now that we have like 17 lands data. There's one of the common things that people are looking at to witness that effect. The strategy that's so bad it then becomes draftable for that one person. That is something that sometimes you can expose by looking at not just the general draft pool, but like higher ranked drafters, people that are less likely to like just bumble into birds because they're cute, and more likely to like do it for a reason. And so I guess that's the thing to keep an eye on. Can we get does the win rate actually like stabilize or go to an okay place for the higher level drafters? I don't know. I'm not a mathologist, so. Yeah, but if you want to talk templating or you want to talk Bloomburrow Limited, the Discord is the place to do it. People are just talking every day. It's just like a place to hang out. It's kind of a medium volume Discord server, which is the sweet spot, or at least to me it is. I'm biased. So hop on there if you need to find us. I'm Tim F. Riley there, and you're Mono Whiteboarder. And thank you for listening.
You need to do the template for the conclusion. That's the podcast. Join Discord. Thanks.
Obviously, they're listening, so you don't need to say thanks for listening. We're keeping it tight. I like it.